My name is Evelyn Carter, and I am 82 years old. I spent my whole life in the quiet town of Willow Creek, Georgia, raising my daughter, cooking Sunday meals, and volunteering at the local library after my husband died in '97. I never remarried. My whole heart was in raising Delilah, my only child, my miracle, the reason I got out of bed every morning after Richard passed. But on that cold Thursday evening, as thunder cracked above our heads and the rain pelted down like the sky itself was crying for me, I stood on her front porch with nothing but my old suitcase and the sweater I'd knitted for her baby, now soaked through and heavy. "Mom," Delilah said, her voice hard and sharp, "you're holding us back. You've overstayed. This isn't your home anymore." I blinked at her like I'd just been slapped. Her husband, Dean, leaned against the doorframe, arms folded like this was just some business transaction. He didn't say a word. He just watched. Cold. Satisfied. "You want freedom?" I asked her, my voice trembling. "I gave up mine so you could have yours." She scoffed. "Then let me live it," she replied, and with that, she picked up my worn leather suitcase, tossed it off the porch like it was a bag of trash, and shut the door. Just like that. The suitcase landed on the steps with a dull thud, bounced once, and came to rest beside the dying azaleas I used to water every morning. I stared at it. I stared at that door. I didn't cry. Not yet. I picked up my suitcase and turned into the storm. I had nowhere to go. No one waiting for me. No coat. No umbrella. No plan. Just one thought repeating in my mind, this is not how my story ends. I didn't know where I was walking, I just knew I had to keep moving. The rain had soaked my hair, my clothes, even my shoes. My toes squished with every step down the sidewalk, each one heavier than the last. The neighborhood looked different now, cold, unfamiliar. These were the same streets I used to push Delilah's stroller down. Same mailboxes I once taught her to read from. But tonight, they felt like they belonged to strangers. I stopped under a flickering street lamp near the corner of Elm and Pine. My suitcase was too heavy for my hands, so I let it drop. My fingers ached. My back throbbed. But worse than the pain in my body, was the storm inside my heart. How did we get here? How did the little girl who used to cry when I left her at school, grow up to throw me out like I was yesterday's newspaper? I sat down on the wet bench outside Franklin's pharmacy, the same place I used to buy Delilah her birthday balloons. I closed my eyes and let the memories pull me back. Flashback to 1978. I was 36 when Richard and I finally had Delilah. Doctors told us it might never happen, and then, there she was, 7 pounds of soft skin, lungs like a trumpet, and eyes that stared straight into my soul. Richard wept when he held her. We lived in a small house with yellow curtains and a leaky roof, but we were happy. I stayed home with her while Richard worked 2 jobs. I cooked every meal from scratch. I read her books every night. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't care. I had waited my whole life for that little girl. Back to the present 2023. A car sped past me, splashing muddy water over my skirt. I flinched, but I didn't move. What was there to go back to? My phone, a flip phone Dean insisted I upgrade, had died hours ago. No one to call, anyway. I had no siblings. No cousins. The few friends I had left either passed or were in homes too far away. The cold crept into my bones. I was shivering. My knuckles had turned purple. Then I saw headlights approaching slowly, not speeding like the others. The car stopped. The window rolled down. "Ma'am? Are you all right?" came a voice, female, young, cautious. I hesitated. I could lie. Or I could tell the truth. "I've just been kicked out of my own daughter's house," I said. A pause. Then, "Do you need a ride somewhere?" The car door opened slowly. "I don't usually do this," the young woman said, leaning across the seat. "But you looked lost." I hesitated. My hands trembled as I clutched my soggy sweater tighter around me. 1,000 warnings rang in my head, things Richard used to say, news stories about women my age being taken advantage of. But then I looked at her face. She couldn't have been older than 25. Freckles across her nose. A tired kindness in her green eyes. "My name's Hannah Rivers," she said. "You don't have to tell me yours if you're not ready. But I've got a thermos of coffee and dry seats." "What do you say?" My knees groaned as I slid into the passenger seat. "Evelyn," I murmured. "Evelyn Carter." "Nice to meet you, Miss Evelyn," she smiled gently. "Let's get you warm." 10 minutes later inside the car. The heater hummed, blasting warmth through my frozen bones. I cradled the steaming cup of coffee in my hands, grateful for something solid, something kind. "You want to tell me what happened?" she asked softly, eyes on the road. I stared out the window. The streetlights blurred in the rain. I raised my daughter alone after my husband passed. I gave her everything I had. Time. Love. Even my pension, when her husband's business failed last year. And tonight, my throat tightened. She told me I was in the way. That I'd become a burden. Hannah didn't speak for a long time. "I'm so sorry," she finally said. Some people forget who held their hands when they couldn't stand on their own. I looked at her. She wasn't like Delilah. This girl had scars in her voice. She'd seen some storms too. Flashback to 1995. Delilah was 17 when she slammed her bedroom door and shouted she hated me. It was over a party I wouldn't let her attend. I remember the fury in her eyes, how she threw her textbooks across the room. I spent that night crying into my pillow while she played angry music. But the next morning, I made her pancakes. I always made her pancakes. That was my mistake. I taught her that love meant always forgiving, even when it hurt. Back to present. "Where should I take you?" Hannah asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Where could I go? Then something flickered in my mind, a memory I hadn't thought of in years. "The old Maplewood Inn," I said slowly. "I think it's still around. I worked there in the 80s. Maybe they'll let me stay a night or two until I figure things out." "I know that place," Hannah nodded. "It's still running. Kinda old, but charming." She glanced over at me. "You sure you'll be okay?" I smiled faintly. "No," I whispered. "But I've been through worse." The Maplewood Inn stood like a memory, tired, wooden, and weathered by time. Ivy crawled up its porch posts, and a dim porch light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. It hadn't changed much. Maybe that's what scared me most. Hannah pulled into the gravel driveway and turned off the engine. "You sure this is it?" she asked, peering through the windshield. I nodded slowly. "I used to change the bedsheets in room 6, I said, half smiling. "Back when I needed extra money to put Delilah through school." She put a gentle hand on my arm. "Do you want me to walk you in?" I looked at her, this strange girl who should have been just another face in the dark, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, safe. "Yes," I whispered. "Please." Inside the inn. The bell above the door jingled as we entered. The air smelled like old books and furniture polish. At the front desk sat a balding man with thick glasses and a wool sweater. He looked up from his crossword puzzle. "Evenin'," he grunted. "Hello," I said cautiously. Is Miss Janie still the owner?" He squinted. "You mean Janie Delmar?" "Lord, no. She passed in 2015. Her nephew runs the place now, me. Curtis Delmar." I nodded, heart sinking a little. "I used to work here," I said. "Long ago. I need a place to stay just for a few nights. I can pay." He held up a hand. "You're Evelyn Carter, ain't you?" My eyes widened. "Yes, how did you?" "My aunt talked about you all the time," he said. Said you were the only one who folded towels the right way. That made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months. Well, towel folding is an art, I said. Curtis grinned. Room SIXS empty. Stay as long as you need. I sat on the bed, suitcase beside me, the rain now a gentle whisper against the windows. The room was warm, familiar. Like being wrapped in a soft old quilt. Hannah stood by the door. I should get going, she said. My mom's probably wondering where I am. I nodded. Thank you, Hannah. You didn't just give me a ride, you gave me something I'd lost. She tilted her head. What's that? Hope. She gave me a tight hug. You're stronger than you think, Miss Evelyn. Don't let what happened define you. Let it refine you. And just like that, she was gone. Flashback to 2017. Delilah cried on the kitchen floor the night Dean lost his job. I held her, fed the kids, sold my jewelry to pay their rent. She called me her rock, her angel. She said she'd never forget what I did. But she did forget. Or maybe she remembered, and just didn't care. Back to present. I stared at the ceiling that night, listening to the storm drift away. My body was tired, but my mind was alive. They thought they broke me. But something deep in me stirred, something they forgot I had. Fire. I wasn't going to fade away in some back room of my daughter's life. I was going to rise. Quietly. Powerfully. On my own terms. The sun rose over Maplewood like a secret. Soft, orange light streamed through the worn lace curtains in room 6, painting everything gold. For the first time in weeks, I woke without fear tugging at my chest. The bed was firm, the sheets smelled like lemon, and I had slept, truly slept. I sat up slowly, bones creaking, and reached for my notebook. It was old and leather-bound, tucked deep inside my suitcase. I hadn't written in it since Richard died. But now, it was time. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote. They took everything from me. But I still have myself. Curtis brought me a mug of hot tea and a plate of warm cornbread. You're staying as long as you need, he said, pulling up a chair. No charge. I blinked. I can't let you. You let my aunt die smiling, he cut in. That's worth more than rent. The words hit me hard. Janie had been good to me back then. And now, here her kindness was returning to me through her nephew. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. As I ate, I thought. Not about revenge. Not yet. But about rebuilding. Delilah thought she'd thrown me into nothingness. But she forgot, I had built everything she stood on. If I could do that for her, maybe I could do it for myself, too. Flashback to 2003. Delilah was pregnant with her first child. She was scared, Dean had been distant even then. She came to me crying, saying she didn't know how to be a mother. I sat her down, made chamomile tea, and told her, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. She cried in my lap like she was 5 again. That was the night she begged me to move in with them. You'll help me raise my kids the way you raised me, she said. So I gave up my apartment. My garden. My peace. And in the end, she kicked me out with nothing. Back to present, Maplewood Garden. Later, I took a walk around the back of the inn. The garden was overgrown but still alive. I knelt slowly and pulled some weeds, my fingers remembering what they used to do. That's when I saw the girl, Hannah, walking up the path again, holding a brown paper bag. I brought breakfast, she smiled. Figured you might not want to eat alone. I blinked, surprised. Didn't expect to see you again. Neither did I, she said. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. We sat on the old bench beneath the apple tree. She handed me the bag, biscuits, jam, and a note. Inside the note, in careful handwriting, were 4 words. You deserve more, Evelyn. After Hannah left again, I pulled out my old planner. Most of the pages were blank, except for a few emergency contacts, and an address I hadn't looked at in years. Rosehill Community Bank, Richard's old life insurance file. Dean had said the paperwork was too complicated, that there was nothing left. But I had never seen the account for myself. My hands trembled as I circled the address. If Dean lied about that, what else had he taken? It was time to find out. The next morning, I wore my cleanest dress and pulled my thinning hair into a soft bun. I didn't have much left, but dignity? Dignity was something no one could take unless I handed it over, and I'd handed too much over already. Curtis offered to drive me to the bank. "You sure about this?" he asked as we reached the parking lot. "No," I said honestly. "But I've lived with too many unanswered questions. And I'm tired of being afraid of the answers." Rosehill Community Bank, 10:42 a.m. The building hadn't changed, same marble floors, same stale air, same fake smiles behind the counters. I stepped up to the front desk and cleared my throat. "Good morning, ma'am." "How can I help you?" the young man asked, barely looking up. "I need to check an account under the name Richard Carter. He was my husband. He passed away in 1997. The banker tapped at his keyboard. "I'll need identification, and any related documents." I handed over my ID and the small, crinkled letter I found tucked behind our wedding photo years ago, Richard's handwritten note about opening a life insurance policy for Evelyn, in case I ever go first. The banker typed, squinted, and then froze. I'll need to get the manager." My pulse quickened. 10 minutes later, office door closes. The branch manager, a woman named Sylvia Hart, offered me a seat and slid a folder across the desk. "Mrs. Carter," she said, folding her hands, "this file shows that your late husband left behind a life insurance policy worth $312,000. I nearly dropped my purse. "That can't be right," I whispered. "My son-in-law said," he said there was nothing. Sylvia's face darkened. "According to our records, someone accessed this file 3 years ago. A power of attorney was presented. It authorized Dean Templeton to act on your behalf." My blood turned cold. "I never gave him that power," I said. "Would you like to file a fraud investigation?" she asked gently. "We can freeze the account immediately." I stared at the folder. Dean had stolen my future. While I was sewing curtains and reading bedtime stories to his kids, he was emptying my husband's legacy behind my back. "Yes," I said, my voice hardening. "Freeze everything." Flashback to 2020. I was in the kitchen, stirring soup when Dean walked in. "Hey, Evelyn," he said too casually. "You ever think about updating your legal stuff? You know, just in case?" I laughed. "I don't own much anymore." He smiled thinly. "Still, better safe than sorry." He handed me a stack of papers that I barely read. I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him. Back to present, outside the bank. Curtis sat on the hood of the car, sipping coffee. "Well?" he asked. I handed him the folder. His eyes widened as he flipped through it. "That slimy bastard," he muttered. "What are you gonna do now?" I looked out at the sky. It was clearer than it had been in days. "I'm going to get it all back," I said. Not out of anger. Not even for revenge. I turned to him. "I'm doing it, because I earned it." That night at Maplewood Inn. I spread the papers across the desk in room 6, documents, names, dates. I started making calls. I contacted a lawyer. I called the fraud department. I reached out to someone at the Department of Aging Services. Every move I made, I wrote down. And in the middle of it all, I texted Hannah. "You were right. I do deserve more. And I'm getting it." She replied in seconds. "Good. Let me know how I can help." The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and quiet determination. Curtis let me use the inn's office, where I set up a makeshift command center, documents stacked in neat piles, a list of contacts on the corkboard, and a calendar where I circled every important date in red. Every morning, I'd rise early, comb my hair, and put on lipstick, not because I had visitors, but because I wanted to see a woman of purpose in the mirror. Phone call, attorney's office. Mrs. Carter, this is Angela Reese, elder law specialist. I've reviewed the documents you sent. The signature on the power of attorney form does not match any of your legal records. So what does that mean? It means you have a strong case of fraud and financial elder abuse. We can sue Dean Templeton, and possibly recover the funds. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Do it. Flashback to 2009. I remember handing Delilah a check for $10,000 when they were behind on their mortgage. She cried, said she didn't deserve me. I smiled and said, "You don't owe me anything. Just raise those babies with love." That was the problem, I gave everything with no expectation of return. And people like Dean saw that as weakness. But it wasn't weakness. It was love. And now, I was learning that love must also have boundaries. Present in Maplewood Inn. Hannah came by again. This time, with a laptop and a plan. "I created a folder with everything we have on Dean," she said, typing quickly. Emails, his fake signature, photos of the documents. I even found a thread on a legal forum. He tried something similar with a neighbor's will. I looked at her, surprised. "You're a bit of a detective," I said. She shrugged. "I'm a journalism major. I dropped out last year to take care of my mom. She has early onset dementia." Her eyes softened. "I know what it feels like to give everything, and be invisible." We sat in silence for a while. 2 generations, different lives, same wounds. Later that night. Angela, my lawyer, called again. "Dean's been notified. He has 10 days to respond. But be warned, people like him don't go down quietly." I smiled into the phone. "I don't need quiet," I said. "I need truth." That night, I couldn't sleep. So I walked out into the garden. The moon was full. The wind warm. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "Richard, I'm sorry I let this happen." But then I stood tall and added, "I'm fixing it." Flashback to 1982. Richard used to say, "You're the strongest person I know, Evie. You just don't see it yet." He saw something in me long before I did. Now I finally saw it too. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thick envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in Dean's arrogant handwriting. Curtis handed it to me while I sat on the porch swing, sipping chamomile tea. "Want me to burn it?" he asked. I smiled. "No. I want to see what a cornered rat writes when he realizes the trap has closed." I opened it slowly. Inside was a single-page letter, and a check, $70,000. The letter read, "Evelyn. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I was trying to protect Delilah. The money wasn't stolen, it was redirected. You always said family comes first. I thought you'd understand. If you drop the investigation, this check is yours. Let's keep this quiet, for everyone's sake. Dean." I stared at the page. Redirected? This man had drained my husband's legacy, left me in the rain like trash, and now had the nerve to offer a bribe? That afternoon, Angela's office, on speakerphone. Angela's voice was clear and sharp. "This is a classic intimidation tactic. He's scared. He knows he's going to lose in court. What if I took the money and walked away?" I asked. There was a pause. "You could. But would that bring you peace?" I looked down at the check. "No. It wouldn't." Flashback to 2015. Delilah sat beside me in the hospital room after my hip surgery. "You won't end up in a home, Mom," she'd said. "You'll always have a place with me." I believed her. Now I realized, promises made in comfort often dissolve in crisis. Present, the confrontation. I dressed carefully that day. Navy blue coat. Simple brooch. My wedding ring still on my hand. Curtis drove me to Delilah's house. He offered to wait outside. Dean opened the door, shock flashing across his face. Evelyn. I'm not here for tea, I said calmly. I'm here to tell you this ends now. Delilah appeared behind him, pale and anxious. I never meant to hurt you, she said. Dean said it was temporary. That you'd never find out. You let it happen, Delilah, I cut in. You watched him tear through everything your father left me. You turned your face while I dried your children's tears and cleaned your kitchen. And when I had nothing left, you threw me away. Her lip quivered. You don't understand the pressure we were under. I shook my head. No, you don't understand what love looks like when it's real. I carried you through every storm. And the first time I needed shelter, you gave me the street. Dean tried to speak, but I raised a hand. You can keep your check, I said. You'll need it for your lawyer. Then I turned to my daughter one last time. I hope one day, you grow the kind of spine I did. I hope your children don't do to you what you did to me. And then? I walked away. Later that night in Maplewood Inn. I sat by the fireplace with Hannah, both of us wrapped in blankets, sipping cocoa. Was it hard? She asked. Yes, I said. But it was harder pretending I was okay. We watched the flames crackle. You're not just fighting for justice, she whispered. You're healing something bigger. I nodded slowly. I'm healing me. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old secrets. I sat in the front row, next to Angela, my lawyer. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from years of pain waiting for a voice. Delilah and Dean sat on the other side of the courtroom. He wore a cheap gray suit and an expression that screamed smug. Delilah looked hollow. Not angry. Not sorry. Just empty. The judge, a sharp woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, called the case. Carter versus Templeton, fraudulent power of attorney. Financial exploitation of an elder. That was my name. My name. And today, I was no longer silent. Testimony, on the stand. Angela led me through the questions gently. Mrs. Carter, can you tell the court how you discovered the missing funds? I held the microphone like a lifeline. I was thrown out of my daughter's house with nothing but a suitcase. A kind stranger found me. I had no money, no plan. But I remembered something my husband once said, protect yourself, even when no one else will. That led me to the bank. To the truth. Angela held up the forged power of attorney. Did you ever sign this? No. Did you authorize Dean Templeton to access your accounts? Never. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pen scribbling. Angela nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Cross-examination, Dean's lawyer. He tried to twist the narrative. She lived with them rent-free for over a decade. Isn't it true she was financially supported by the Templetons? I cooked, cleaned, raised their children, paid their debts, and gave them my pension, I replied. That wasn't support. That was service. Unpaid and unappreciated. Gasps from the gallery. The judge banged the gavel for order. Flashback to 1989. I remembered ironing Richard's shirts the morning he died. He left a note on the table before his heart gave out. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll fight if you're ever mistreated. You're stronger than you think. I never knew what he meant, until now. Present, verdict day. It took 3 days. I sat in the same chair, hands clasped, heart steady. The judge looked directly at me before she spoke. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Evelyn Carter. The defendant is ordered to pay full restitution of $312,000, plus punitive damages. Furthermore, criminal charges for fraud will be referred to the district attorney's office. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. For the first time in years, I breathed like a free woman. Dean's mouth twisted into a scowl. Delilah wouldn't look at me. They lost something deeper than money that day. They lost me. That night in Maplewood Inn. I lit a candle beside Richard's old photo. I did it, I whispered. I finally stood up. For you. For me. Hannah hugged me from behind. Everyone in town is talking about you. They're calling you the woman who beat the system. I smiled softly. No, I said. I just remembered who I was. 3 months after the trial, I stood at the edge of Willow Creek's community center stage. A crowd of faces stared up at me, women young and old, single mothers, widows, caregivers, and grandmothers. They weren't here for charity. They were here for strength. I tapped the microphone. My name is Evelyn Carter, I began. I'm 82 years old. I was betrayed, stolen from, and discarded by the people I loved most. But I am still here. Applause erupted. But I wasn't finished. I spent my life putting others first. I gave until I was empty. But here's what I learned, your heart is not a bottomless well. You have to protect it. You have to protect yourself. Flashback to the week after the verdict. I used the money not just to rebuild my life, but to rebuild the lives of others. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't take a cruise. I donated a portion to elder abuse prevention. I funded a scholarship in Richard's name for girls raised by single mothers. And I bought a small cottage near the edge of town, cozy, with a garden and a wraparound porch. I called it Hope House. Hannah moved in next door. She now runs a newsletter and blog called The Quiet Ones Rise, where she shares stories like mine. She says I inspired her. Truth is, she saved me first. The letter from Delilah. It came one morning in a soft blue envelope. Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me. I was selfish. Weak. I let Dean control everything. I failed you as a daughter. But watching you in court, I remembered the mother who braided my hair and taught me right from wrong. I forgot her for too long. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Even if you don't, I'll still be proud of you. Love, Delilah. I read it twice. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and whispered to myself, not yet. Forgiveness would come. Maybe. But not on her timeline. On mine. Back to the stage. I finished my speech with tears in my eyes. You're never too old to start again. Never too broken to become whole. And never too forgotten to rise. They stood. They clapped. They cheered. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't even feel like a survivor. I felt like a leader. I sat in a rocking chair on my porch that evening, the wind gently stirring the wind chimes. Richard's photo sat on the side table. Hannah's laugh floated from next door. The garden was in full bloom, roses, azaleas, and a tall oak tree we planted in Richard's memory. I closed my eyes, wrapped in peace. I had lost everything. And built something greater. Not revenge. Not bitterness. But freedom.